Testing. Testing.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. I'm just gonna hold this. But if everyone can find their seats now, please settle down. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for taking the time to come out today. My name is Alicia. I'm the Secretary of Internal Affairs for the AMS, and I will be moderating today's special assembly. So we're gonna go ahead and begin with a flag acknowledgement. Cataraqui, or Kingston as we understand it today, is abundant in history and in modern day traditions of many First Nations and Métis. In particular, the Alma Mater Society would like to acknowledge that its Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory, which Queen's University resides on. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are immersed in thousands of generations of Indigenous history, including language, art, celebrations, and resilience. We recognize that it was within the Concord Purchase of 1783 that these lands were made available for settlements, and the agreements made were upheld by the First Peoples, but not the British Crown, or later the Canadian government. While we work on these lands as uninvited guests, we actively benefit from the oppression of Indigenous peoples. Because of our settler positionality, we have an obligation to listen to Indigenous voices, and we must act in ways that will condemn past and ongoing violence against Indigenous peoples and support positive change. As a branch of the society that strives to connect student leaders and facilitate positive change and student advocacy on Turtle Island, we strive to maintain the core values and teaching from Indigenous peoples, and we are incredibly grateful for the ability to do so. As the Secretariat Office facilitates assembly, election, and judicial affairs, it is our duty to ensure that the voices of Indigenous and marginalized peoples are amplified, as well as provide resources on how we can facilitate and help in advocacy that is important. We encourage all members of the office as student leaders to reflect on privileges that they have been afforded on this land and use it to ensure campus safety, accessibility, and impact for all students. As settlers on the stolen land of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, we must continue to educate ourselves and strive to decolonize every layer of our governance system and curriculum, and to indigenize our learning. The resilience of Indigenous peoples and their traditions should be applauded and inspire strength and kindness in us all. The Wampum Belt Covenant should be used as our compass as we navigate our journey of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. The Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people have a mutual understanding of how to share the land and resources peacefully with one another. By living on this land, we must also abide by these values. So just to go over speaker's business briefly, it is very different than traditional assembly, as today is a special assembly. Same rules apply as traditional assemblies. Please wait to be called on by myself, and then I will address you. Before you say anything, please say your position and your name. And raise hands or your placards for points of information, points of personal privilege, or points of order. So I'll also go over the structure today and what your responsibilities are as voting members of Assembly and as members at large. You can also find the structure on the AMS website under the Assembly tab titled Rules of Special Assembly. So we'll first begin with opening presentations by each team. Oh my god, sorry. We'll first begin with opening presentations by each team, which will go over each team's experiences, or the team's experiences, why they want to be AMS executives, as well as the ideas that they have for the AMS. There will be a 10-minute presentation, and this is time. If you go over the 10 minutes, I will unfortunately have to press the gavel to cut you off. Next, there will be a structured debate, which will be 1 hour and 30 minutes long. Following this will be team questioning, in which 20 minutes will be dedicated to the team to go over questions. We aim to exhaust the question period. So if you have a question, please raise your hand or submit it through the form. Following this, the team will present a 5-minute long closing statement, and then they will be required to leave while assembly members and members at large have a discussion on everything that was presented. Then voting will occur, and a breakdown of each assembly member's vote will be presented to assembly. As voting members of assembly, please pay attention to each team's presentation and prepare many questions. You're responsible for ensuring that this is a good team for the AMS next year, and you are representing your constituents during this very important time. To the general members, you will have the opportunity to ask questions to the teams during the debate period and question period. You can also submit your question to the form using the QR code. That's what's on each slide there, as well as down the aisles. There are QR codes that you can scan to submit your questions. I also want to share, for transparency and to ensure a democratic process, that should this team not win the vote of confidence, that there is the opportunity for individual candidates to go before assembly and be appointed. This will happen as soon as possible, and it is supported by past precedent as well as our policy. Please also note that each portion will be timed, and again, you will be cut off if you are not finished your sentence with the gavel. For this reason, try to ensure that you're keeping within the time frame. There is a timer in front of you, so please pay attention to this. Please also note that I will expand on what each section entails when we come to that section. Alrighty, into motion 1. I move that AMS Assembly approve the agenda of the meeting of February 13th, 2024. This requires a 2/3 majority vote. Does anyone have any objections or amendments to the agenda? Yes.
We request that action be amendment or amendments.
Sorry, can you use the mic if that's okay? It should be on your, yeah.
We'd like to raise a motion to reduce the debate time to 45 minutes instead of 90.
To 45 minutes?
Yes.
So motion, I move that we reduce the debate time, which was initially 90 minutes. We reduce that to 45 minutes. Is there a seconder on this motion? Alrighty, thank you, Sophia. Okay, so with the amended agenda, let's put this to motion. So all in favor of approving the agenda with the amendment? Okay, this motion passes. Sorry, I didn't really do the counting. The next motion.
Sorry, we have another motion.
Oh.
Yes, sorry. We'd like to request a 15-minute recess before the voting takes place.
Okay, can I have a seconder on that motion? Okay, Sophia. All in favor of a 15-minute recess? All right, this motion passes. Okay. So the next motion that we have is the approval of adopting rules for special assembly. I move that AMS Assembly adopt the rules of special assembly for the meeting of February 13th, 2024. This current motion will proceed with a 2/3 majority vote. Does anyone have any questions before we vote? Alrighty. Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the rules of special assembly? Okay, this motion passes. Finally, we have our third motion that AMS Assembly enters into a special meeting to consider the appointment of an executive team for the 2024-25 year. Does anyone have any questions about this motion? All right, seeing none, this requires a 2/3 majority vote, and then after this is approved, all motions moving forward will be passed with a simple majority. So all in favor of entering into a special assembly meeting, please raise your placards. All right, this motion passes. Alrighty, so now we have our opening presentation from Team LOT. I will pull up your presentation in a second. So you will have 10 minutes to do so, and the timer will begin. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. The timer will begin right when you start talking.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for coming out. It's great to see a full assembly here. We're going to start with some introduction, and I'll introduce myself first. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Owen. I'm in my fourth, what was supposed to be final year of computing. In my spare time, I like to cook, I play basketball, I like to spend time outdoors. Yeah, if you ever see me around, don't feel afraid to say hi, I love chalk, so yeah. So why do I want to be president? I've been involved with many different communities at Queens. I've been very lucky to be involved with many different communities at Queens, and over that time I've realized that a leader is something I want to be. My first leadership experience was with the Queens Sports Analytics Organization, where I was the co-chair, where I quickly realized that leadership was something I wanted to pursue in the future. Being able to make positive change was amazing, and it was a great feeling. Through that, I decided to step up in other communities I was involved with on campus. I applied to be an AMS walk-home student engagement analytics supervisor, which has been an amazing experience. It's amazing to be able to be a leader and contribute to the community that I was welcomed into with open arms. Following that, I also became COMSA, leading student government, student vice president of student affairs. Over the last year, we've been working tirelessly to try and restore the engagement that's been lost since COVID, and it's just been such a fulfilling experience. Being able to make change and even work with younger year students and be able to mentor them to also be able to pursue their own change is amazing. Without all these previous experiences on campus, I wouldn't be standing before you today. Not only have I met some of my closest friends, made some of my best memories on campus, but most importantly, it's taught me that change is possible. Change is hard, and frankly, really scary, guys. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's important to realize that a lot of the change you'll start is bigger than yourself. I want to be president because I want to lead the change to restore engagement with the AMS and Queens at whole. I think the AMS has many opportunities for students to get involved and make change on a community basis, and I really want to help with that. I wish everybody could understand what they're capable of, and I really do want to help others chase their dreams and make change. One of the things I often revisit is be the change you want to see. I want to be AMS president because I want to continue the positive impact I've had on campus and empower others to do the same.
Wow, thank you so much, Owen. That was very inspiring. Now, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tyler, also known as Triple T by some. And let's start at the start, shall we? I'm a proud member of the Hoa people of Vietnam, and my parents were both refugees to Canada after the Vietnam conflict. I'm so proud to be standing in front of you today as not only a second-generation refugee, but a first-generation student. That's why being here today has made me so proud. Being able to stand among you as peers is a dream come true for not only me, but my family. I never thought I'd see this day, and none did my parents. So, to be here today means a lot to me, especially as a Queen's Commerce student at such a reputable school. I am a proud member of the Queen's Commerce community. Even after being rejected twice, I stayed headstrong and didn't hesitate for a second. This is why Queens is my home, and I want to be Vice President of Operations. Outside of Queens, I'm very involved. I enjoy dancing, whether it be stage rage, salsa, K-pop, anything you name it, but I also like a quiet night in. I'm a huge fan of anime, video games, comic books, or any nerdy adventures. Why do I want to be president? Vice President of Operations. Well, I have many experiences, and this is not just a role for me. This is my career. I have 5 years in student government, as well as 4 years in municipal and federal government operations. This is a career to me, and I plan to make it so. I'm very involved in campus, having won 7+ awards for community engagement as well as contributions. And I've done my research, I have done my preparations, with over 11+ consultations with student leaders and head managers, as well as over 5 years of business school experience. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Liu Yan. I'm currently in my third year PPE, Politics, Philosophy, Economics, and I was a minor in art history. So for me, I have a very rich advocacy background in the past. So during the high school, I have wrote at least 4 or 5 different proposals to the federal government, especially on the topic of immigration and then international students. Aside from that, I have also been very active on campus, serving over 24 different positions. Worked formerly as the principal's intern, and then also served at the University Senate as the student vice chair this year, and then formerly also on AMS when I was in first year intern. And besides from that, I also have many different experiences in different diverse backgrounds, especially in different clubs, also in environmental stuff, and then also in social issue related clubs. And then the reason why I decided to run is I see there's a lack of engagement, and I really hope to, through working with the incoming team, and then also work with my commissioner to bring that lost engagement back. And then, yeah.
Our platform is based on the 3 pillars of education, transparency, and engagement. The first change we make to promote education is repurpose the Marketing and Communications Office to educate students on how Queens and the AMS works as a whole. Students can't speak their voices on issues they don't understand, so it's important that everybody knows how these things work. I know how hard it is to learn as students, with an already basic schedule. We must reduce the barriers to getting involved as to make it possible for as many people to get involved as we can in order to make as much positive change.
Yeah, so AMS have many student committee that people are not really aware of. So we will raise awareness of those student committee and then bring more students' voice into the decision-making process. And then besides, we will also try to educate students more on the government affairs. By that way, it means more toward how the AMS interact with municipal, provincial, and federal government. And then besides from that, also we will target at bringing more first year to engage and helping them for transition during the summer and during the orientation first years.
On the operations side, we wish to embody education. That's why we are going to go beyond financial and operational transparency and focus on ease of understanding. Even me, with someone with an accounting background, took hours to go through and ruffle through 5 years of AMS accounting, financial, and operational statements. It is unreasonable to expect the average student to do so without this type of background. That is why it is important that we make all financial statements easily digestible in shortened forms so that students can understand the financial and operational state of the AMS. It is unreasonable to expect students to engage with an organization in which they do not understand the soundness of.
As for transparency, one of the ways I really want to focus on promoting awareness and transparency of how things are working inside is building a more informal and stronger connections with faculty society leaders. I know they're all experts in their field, their respective faculties, and I really know that from my experience as a student leader, more informal settings were the easiest to talk about big problems without the added pressure. I think this would make it a lot easier for faculty society leaders to also speak through issues that they're facing and make it easier for us to step in and help them out.
So for VPUA, advocacy will be the key. And then for my portfolio next year, I will showcase more on what has been done inside the commissions, and then also getting more students to involve in this decision-making process, making sure it's more transparent. And then we will also work closely with other, for example, marketing communication office to showcase the different opportunities that we have.
On the operations side, transparency starts within the organization, and it's a two-way street. That's why it's important to foster a culture and community within the AMS that is open to real conversations with the head managers as well as staff. I embody the idea that you should be present on the ground with your staff so that they know that you're available to talk. I'm going to create that culture of informal touch points that go beyond just the weekly and bi-weekly meetings. I want to be there for my staff, and I want them to be able to succeed in their goals.
Lastly, on engagement, I want to harbor as much feedback from different sources that we can to understand the problem from a student's perspective. It's easy to sit in this room and make decisions ourselves, but it's extremely important to me that we're making decisions based on what students are telling us. But additionally, to get more feedback on this, I'll be speaking to faculty society leaders, as there's no one shoe fits all for the engagement issue. We'll need to find different solutions that are tailored to different groups of individuals.
I also have many background in different student community. So we will focus on getting more students involved in clubs, AMS event, and decision-making process. So we're building more collaboration across the university, faculty society, and student groups. And then besides from that, we will also foster more conversation on current issues of having different working group and a different committee to work on to solve for a common solution.
Throughout my consultations with head managers, there was a common theme that came true. That we have lost a lot of the brand identity that the AMS's 11 services had prior to COVID. This is an issue because students cannot feel supported if they do not know that these services are there for them to access and there to support them. That's why I'm going to focus on brand recognition as well as user acquisition. Every Queen student should try each service at least once and know it's there for them.
Thank you very much for listening to our platform and for being with us today.
Sorry. Great, thank you for that. Let me just Alrighty, so now we'll move into the debate period. As you remember, we motioned for it to be reduced to 45 minutes instead of 90 minutes. I also want to reiterate that each question should be regarding the team's platforms. Please do not present any questions that are related to the individual or their character in any way. We want to ensure this is a safe space for everybody. I also want to add that the same question will be asked to each team, and each team will have 1 minute exactly to respond. The timer is in front of you. Again, I have my gavel, and I'm not afraid to use it. Yeah, if you're an assembly member, please raise your hand to ask a question. If you're a student at large, please submit your questions through the QR code, or you can ask it via the live stream YouTube chat. Again, I want to remind everybody that questions must pertain to the team's platform and not personal characteristics. A question will be discarded should it be about an individual's characteristic. And again, this period will last 45 minutes. Okay, let's start the first question. So, what is your biggest change that you're looking to make in your potential term as AMS executive?
The greatest change that we aim to create as an AMS executive is a building of the physical community of the AMS as well as Queens at large. The JDUG is an unescapable opportunity that is priceless and will not present itself again. That is why we hold a special opportunity here as AMS executives of the next year to rebuild the physical community that has been lacking since pre-COVID. Nowadays, while Queens has an extremely strong community, it is in bubbles because the physical spaces where you meet, interact, and share within this community are limited to your buildings and your own departments. Having one shared space for all Queens students in the JDUC will allow us to create that community that goes beyond just departments and just your own friend and club group.
Your next question is, why did your team not come forward during the regular campaign process, and why did you step forward now?
I can take that one. Yeah, so I think I can speak for myself. I think to be completely transparent, I think this is a really scary thing, running for something like this. Very, very scary. I'm sure any student leader here can attest to that. It's a very, very scary experience. Put yourself out there. And I guess for myself personally, and I know I've spoken to you too, that initial process, I guess there wasn't as much of a bump as I expected. But after I saw the special assembly, the rules had changed, and really, I guess, we stopped to doubt ourselves and we realized that it was a more realistic process than we thought. I think it was took a lot of confidence for us to be here. So I could say it was also knowing that there needed to be a team that stepped up, really motivated myself personally. I do think that this is a responsibility of students to step up and try to be the most qualified person in this role, and I felt compelled personally to take that up personally.
Alrighty, so your next question, what should be the nature of the relationship between the student government and the university administration?
So personally, I've worked for the university for the last 2 years, and especially sitting on the Senate. I would say the relationship between student government and then the university should be in a relationship, especially AMS, is not only a student government, it's also a student union. You need to constantly advocating for different students' rights and different student concern. So I would say the best relationship with university is like on the stage, on the Senate, on the board of, well, mainly on the Senate, and then in some closed-door meeting, you're advocating for students. At the same time, quoting a saying from one of the former principal, Daniel Wolf, he said like the best relationship should be you can debate on the stage, but you also can grab a coffee after the meetings. So I would say the key is advocating on the stage and then doing the other stuff. You still keep a mutually beneficial relationship and then also making sure you don't burn the bridges.
Thank you. Which goal that you presented is the most important to your team, and what are the qualifications that you have to achieve this goal?
Yeah, I'd say by far the biggest and important goal is engagement. From my experience working in student government, the problem is that people don't know, they can't use anything. So no matter how good you are, if somebody doesn't know that you're available and you're a resource for them, it practically doesn't count. So by far engagement is the starting of these stepping stones to our platform. I can say personally I've been qualified, I've been working as working in engagement with both computing student government and at Wacom for almost the past year now. Engagement's a difficult problem and it requires you to be brutally realistic. I think it's easy to put blame of engagement on students and complain about why do we not have turnout or why are people not coming to these events. But I think it's more important to drastically put those responsibilities on ourselves to provide the most easy, convenient, and safe space for people to come forward and be engaged and accept those challenges.
Thank you. Queer students, especially trans and non-binary students, face many barriers, whether it's professors rejecting your pronouns or shifts that require a link to a specific gender. It's more than just accessible washroom. What do you have as a tangible action to our queer, trans, and non-binary students?
Being a queer person myself, I understand the struggles that the community goes through. I know it's hard to feel accepted, especially when your existence is questioned every single moment of your waking life. And you feel awful having to hide sometimes from your loved ones, your parents. And so I really wish that Queens can become that safe space that it has become for me. I know a lot of students don't feel the same way, and I do not blame them. There's a lot we need to do to help students of the queer community. One tangible action that we wish to accomplish is to increase funding to BIPOC talks as well as Queer for Peers. These two services under the PSC have been neglected over the last year and have received almost zero funding or late funding. However, we will make this a priority this next year. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to remind Assembly members that you can also ask questions directly to the team by just simply raising your placard. Yeah, just a reminder. So the next question that we have is, how do you plan on engaging with and supporting Indigenous students on campus? How do your past actions demonstrate your commitment to such promises?
So as the first year intern for the Queens Native Student Association in the past, I would say the best way to helping Indigenous students first is that we need to provide a safe space for Indigenous students to foster in this community. Especially with the new construction stuff for the different Indigenous space, hopefully we can have more even educational opportunity, not just for the truth and reconciliation, but something beyond the stuff. For example, like how many people here heard about like Turtle Islands or Skywoman? Those different kind of stories can be the way that we can help the non-Indigenous student also to learn about the culture and then the beauty of the Indigenous culture. And that will be something we want to focus on, is beyond just even having more cultural exchange, letting people to learn about different culture and different communities.
Thank you. Your engagement pillar states about rebuilding lost brand identity, a unique pillar of the previous AMS team. What is different about your approach?
When I speak about rebuilding lost brand identity, I talk about it not just from a business aspect, because that is my background, and it is something I see doing an analyst of all 11 services. Students just aren't aware they are there, and there's not that trust that they used to have before COVID, right? Using services such as Walk Home, Peer Support Center, and many, many other services, the trust needs to be there. Otherwise, the functionality and the utility that these services bring to students is just meaningless. That's why it is important that we make sure that students feel welcome in these spaces and using these services. And I think that's something I really want to focus on that differs from just general engagement. It's understanding that students need to feel supported by the AMS to be engaged, and the services and their brand identity makes a really good opportunity for that.
Alrighty. Jumping off of the previous question asked, if initial trials fail, engagement may even decrease and client acquisitions require great additional funding. How are you going to prevent progress from going backwards, especially when the AMS membership fee has not increased in the last 15 years and a motion for an increase was shot down in previous assemblies?
I would like to take a moment to talk about the interconnectedness of our pillars, right? Engagement is extremely important. However, we're not going to get there without also having transparency in education. Now, we talked about the student fees, we talked about them being shot down, we talked about them not being raised, and why is that? I think personally it's because students don't understand the financial state of the society. And like I mentioned before, how can we expect them to when they don't have a background in accounting and they don't have time to go over 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 pages of accounting documents audited by KPMG? It's just not reasonable. And how can we expect it to be reasonable for them to vote for a student fee that will change our financial state? And that's the whole point of a student fee, is to change our financial state so we can do more. When they don't understand our current financial state, it's like asking someone to add $5 to X, whereas they don't know what X is. It's an unknown variable, and because of that, it breeds uncertainty and untrust.
Thank you. The rhetoric of many incoming executives is transparency. Describe the unique ways in which your transparency solution is tangible and achievable.
I think the one way I know I'm personally going to enforce this is ensuring consistent and increasing even more communication with student society leaders than we did before. Like I said, from experience, they're a great touch point, and the informal setting allowed for a lot more casual discussion and to really be open about how the university is currently going. And based on that success, I want to continue to expand this. I know I mentioned through more informal socialization, meeting on a more regular basis, and I just plan on having, I understand the faculty society leaders do a great job at disseminating information down to their respective groups. So I think that being able to talk about general issues as a group, talk through these problems, and then be able to lead them to help put them through their own methods of communication.
Yeah, so for my portfolio, we will be focusing on educating the non-small leaders students to for example, we'll have more centralized websites, centralized platform on social media, informing what happened on the AMS assembly and then also behind the scenes.
Thank you. AMS is historically an umbrella that supports all faculties, and faculties are representative of the larger student bodies at Queen's University. Yet, your platform only mentions stakeholders that are not faculty societies. How will you support faculty societies, including NSOC, ComSoc, HSS, NSS, CISA, SPEACSA, COMSA, and NASAS? Yeah. AMS is historically an umbrella that supports all faculties, and faculties are representative of the larger student bodies at Queen's University, yet your platform only mentions stakeholders that are not faculty societies. How will you support faculty societies?
Okay, well, I know I've already briefly touched on this, but I think to continue to support faculty societies, like I said, I know I'm not repeating myself at this point, but working with working with the leaders, but also, as we said, it's building that central space for different faculties to come together in the JDUC. I think that can be, I know Tyler mentioned that a lot of culture moves in bubbles these days, and it's difficult to meet one another when you don't have a centralized area. But
Yeah, so the key for this is having more collaboration. For example, like Tyler also mentioned, and then Owen also mentioned, we're going to have more spaces for student leaders to interact with one another. Besides from that, AMS is now an academic body. Each faculty society is managing their own academic affairs. So we will be serving as a body where, like, as a community to help to push some different changes. Even, for example, the financial deficit stuff. We will be here to support all the faculty society on advocacy works.
In your pillar of education, you wish to give more information to students, especially in AMS dealings. Yet, the AMS already sends out newsletters to students and actively educates students on important matters through its website and social media. What is unique to your solution?
So yeah, that's a great question. I think that our pillars don't seek to discredit the work that's currently going on. I know there's a lot of great work already happening, and I've never set that against that. And I think that that's the confusing thing, is that apart from all this effort that's already happening, when I went to most people, I tell friends, I'm running for AMS, I give you a coin flip if somebody knew what that was. And that's frustrating, right? Because there's all this work, and there's so many of these dedicated student leaders putting in great work, people working within the AMS, the services, the offices, commissions, there's so much good work being done, but the fact that some students still don't even know what it is, it's really baffling. And I think that this is something that I can see from an external point of view, but it's something that, like I said, I'm going to need to tackle from once I'm in the role. And this will be done, as I before mentioned, having more avenues like focus groups, like surveys, just hearing as many student voices as possible, because this is a really interesting problem with all this hard work being done, but still a lack of recognition on a larger scale.
Thank you. What are tangible plans your team will implement to ensure the safety of Muslims and Arab students on campus, and what will you do to combat all forms of anti-Arab hate and Islamophobia at Queen's?
Well, first of all, I want to say that hate has no place on campus. It's extremely disheartening to hear whenever there's anything of that sort happening. It's disgusting to see that happening on campus that we're so close to home. It's extremely important that we can help promote a safe campus, especially with the opening of the JDUC. I know this is something that the commissions are already working towards, but on top of that, I want to continue to talk with student groups on campus and with those more educated than I am on this topic to see what we can do to help prevent these issues.
We will also keep the direct communication open to the Muslim groups, especially when any Islamic phobias things happen, and we will make sure the students can reach out to the commissions, reach out to the BPUA, and we will help to address the stuff and bring it out to the university and try to find associate groups and the department to help to solve different stuff. For example, like bringing the campus security to the conversation will be one of the ways we were, target at.
How will you mitigate student awareness of the JDUC and transition the AMS into student life?
Like I mentioned before, initial acquisition is going to be extremely important, and that's going to take place a lot in August and September. Apologize, in advance for my business mindset when it comes to this, but the JDUC, like anything, is a service. It's a community that it's something that students can use, and so having people try that out for the first time, I think that's going to be the most important part, especially in September. That's when engagement and interest is at the highest. So if we can really target students at that point, I think that we'll see massive success. Going through that is going to be important, especially for the first years that are coming in, who have never been on campus before. We need to take radically different strategies when it comes to those individuals versus other target audiences, such as second, third, and fourth years, who have been on campus before and might be hesitant to try out this new service.
Your pillar of transparency contains many subjective and theoretical goals such as increasing empathy and more informal socials. However, there are already working socials, and AMS is a huge organization. With everyone's busy schedules and diverse interests, how are you going to achieve this tight-knit team by by enforcing informal social and touch points?
Yeah, of course. So during my consultations, I saw that everyone, like you said, has a different schedule. Everyone has a different leadership style. Everyone has a different way they like to work. So right now, I find that the frequency of meetings between VPOPs and head managers acceptable, right? Once a week on one-on-one, as well as every 2 weeks altogether. But I think where there is room for improvement is having a deeper connection with assistant managers as well as general staff. When I talk about creating a tight-knit team, I don't just mean the VPOPs and the head managers. I mean the whole AMS service line. When it comes to that avenue, I don't think it has been explored as much as it should be. Everyone should feel comfortable coming to the VPOPs for whatever reason that they might have. Of course, the main priority will always be the head managers, but I need to be present throughout the whole organization and not just with upper management.
Your pillar of transparency talks about informing students about updates and work done by the commissions and AMS. However, as with any organization, the progress of work is often dynamic and subject to great fluctuations. Why should students care about the entire process of certain projects as opposed to the finished outcome? And how are you going to deliver these updates when students don't care?
Yeah, so for that one, we will focus on setting long-term vision and goals for commission and then all different AMS to focus on. So by that one, I mean, for example, environmental stuff. We are gonna focus not just on the having something transition for the next year, but also in 10 years or stuff, some new initiative or existing initiative to improve on based on the years. And then besides from that, we're also trying to, as I mentioned, we're gonna use more social medias and a different marketing strategy to make sure students know what are we doing and why we're doing those kind of stuff. For example, even a big stuff that I'm gonna focus on next year is gonna be helping to lobby to the provincial government on financial deficit. And that would be something like the student can relate to, and then also something that we can get more voices into this decision-making process.
Yeah, in an era with a lot of bad news, we really want to try and increase how much good news we can spread out.
What is something you are excited about in your portfolio, and how do you intend to build upon previous efforts?
One of the things I know I talk about a lot is working with faculty society leaders, but I can tell after being in that position for myself for the last term, I can tell that I have the utmost respect for the people who put their time, their free time and effort into doing something that's bigger than themselves. That's something I'm extremely excited to see. I know some of the faculty society leaders, the election's already finished, they already know who's replacing them. We don't know yet for COMSTA, so it's an extremely exciting process, especially just to be able to interact with so many students of so many varying backgrounds and disciplines. It's just an amazing interdisciplinary, we only talk about interdisciplinary things, we usually talk projects and, coursework, but to be able to be involved in something like that outside of school, to be in a room which has literally somebody from each faculty is fantastic. That's genuinely very hard to find otherwise. So I can say that's something I'm extremely excited to work for.
I'm extremely excited for the JDAC. Oh my god, this is a business student's dream. 11 different services and businesses all in one building. It's like an ecosystem, and it's so fascinating that I can't wait to work on it.
Can you give an actionable example or two for each of your pillars? Not broad statements, but specific changes that need to be made to improve the society.
Sure. So for example, first for education, we will launch a marketing campaign on educating students first on what's going on AMS and the structure of AMS. And besides from that, we'll also work with every single faculty society on also helping their marketing effort. And then besides from that, for transparency part, we're kind of similar to education. We're making sure we have so more first in person, and then the second is also online media present to making sure people knows what's going on campus. And then lastly,
Yeah, so for education, I really want to create 2 digestible 15-minute infographics. One that explains the AMS's financial past, as well as one that explains AMS's financial presence. I think this will be really helpful for all students. For transparency, I really want to commit to a 24-hour response time policy for all head managers and be there present every day.
How do you plan to prioritize work-life balance through such a challenging role?
I'll start this off. I split this 3 ways. I think it's important. I know how hard it is when you're working on something that you're so obsessed with that you just want to put all your time into it. But I think that something like that is being able to work with a team, and I know Tyler's already briefly mentioned that, but being able to have understanding when you're working with the offices, to be able to have understanding teams that will be able to have a set boundaries and to set strong work.
Yeah, so for me personally, I have been doing at least like 8 different positions every single years at Queen's. So I would say for the time management part, I will definitely try to have more communication with the commissioner and making sure the task was all assigned equal.
I know it's such a cliche, but when you do what you love, it's really not work at the end of the day, right? I'm a huge advocate for business as an extremely interesting and extremely engaging degree, and anything that allows me to work on operations is just a dream come true. So while I do see burnout as a problem, I am optimistic, hopefully optimistic.
How will you work constructively with the rector?
Well, just like any other voice with a lot of power on campus, it's important to ensure consistent communication. That's one of the first things we'll have to ensure. We'll have to make sure we're on the same page about policy, things moving forward, make sure we're on the same page priority-wise. I know we'd probably be open to meeting once we're successful in the role. And
Yeah, since VPUA portfolio is more about advocacy, and then we will, for example, for financial deficit, since we don't have a voting power and a say on the board, we will collaborate more with the rector, trying to address different concerns to herself and also to the others, mainly the undergraduate trustee.
Yeah, of course. As the rector is an elected position that has been chosen by the students, it's important that we have them representing them at every moment. We hope to celebrate our victories as well as our defeats alongside the rector and learn together.
How do you see the AMS interacting with upper administration moving forward?
I think moving forward, we're going to establish and continue our responsibility to strictly advocate for students. I think a lot of our campaign focuses on harboring student voices, but those don't go nowhere if they don't go above us. So as much as it's important to involve student voices in our decision making, but it's important to bring that above us, especially when I'll be on the set advocating for student voices. I'll make sure I'm coming with fully understanding where students lie on these issues, so I can best fully advocate for them in these boards.
So for me, I have built many personal connections with the senior administration in the past few years. And then something I will focus on, like even I have those personal connections, but like what I did understand it, I will keep advocating for the student, such as like to the provost, to the dean, and to the different administration, and then we will keep making sure student voices get heard and then students' concerns get addressed.
How do you see the AMS interacting with faculty societies moving forward? Yeah. How do you see the AMS interacting with faculty societies moving forward?
Yeah, so first thing first, we will have not only the interaction between the us three as exec, we're making sure like the commission have also more interaction with the different faculty society. For example, today I have a meeting with Ryan, the environmental commissioner. One thing like he mentions, kind of we can have more collaboration with Tea Room, so with ANSOC. And then besides from that, we can also making sure like, for example, external affair, we can have more, collaboration with different faculty society when it comes to, addressing stuff to the provincial or federal government, which is something like AMS is mainly focused on. And besides from that, we will also, for example, as we mentioned, the marketing effort, we will have more cross marketing campaign with different faculty society and making sure, for example, we will promote different faculty election and that kind of stuff, just making sure every student knows what's going on the campus, outside from your own faculty.
All right, we have a question from Social Issues Commissioner Turtle.
Hi, I was just wondering, you mentioned when you were asked about how you finally practicing the space for those students, you mentioned involving security. Do you recognize that security might not be the best bet for students to identify as Muslim and might not be the best way to engage in practice of activism? So how would you pinpoint that during that conversation now?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the campus security is just one of the examples that we mentioned. Mainly, we're gonna work with, for example, the new VP Office of Culture, Inclusion staff, and then also with working with even like Human Resource Office on helping to advocate for students' concern. And then even aside from that, even for the Student Wellness Center can be a resources for students to reach out. And then even for Rector, it's also a perfect resource for Muslim students to reach out to, and then making sure their voice gets heard. And then, aside from that, I think one of the main role what we can also do is we need to keep the communication portal open, and then also making sure the students, when the thing happens, we will be the first people to learn and then talk with the Muslim student community, and then making sure we also kind of try to bridge different, for example, meetings with the senior administration and together help to find the common solution.
Thank you. The AMS acts as a liaison between many bodies. How do you plan to balance the competing objectives of faculty societies, administration, and staff?
I know this is a complex problem that presents itself in a lot of political settings. I think, to put it in the most simple terms, students will always come first. And that really ties into our pillars of why it would be necessary for us to get that student opinion on current issues, ensure that we're properly advocating for students and understanding those issues. Like I said, there's no one-size-fits-all for a lot of solutions. So these advocacy issues will need to be talked about for specific problems to which faculties they discern, to which groups of students they concern, and individual solutions will be created for groups of students. But at the end of the day, students will always come first.
Also, different faculty society have their different scenario. For example, our side, also something we didn't really mention is the professor. For example, like on the latest our side faculty board, there's also a strong pushback from the faculty members, and that's something like relationship we need to build up, and it's something personally I have already built up in the past few years.
Queens in the past has had many harmful traditions. How do you plan to continue some while not continuing others?
Yeah, and this is a really difficult part of Queen's culture. I think it takes a lot of self-reflection on what we do, and it takes a lot of, we need to be brutally realistic and safe. I think safety is the #1 priority at all times. We value students safety. So I think evaluating, again, there's a very general question with this, but evaluating specific traditions on an individual basis will be necessary. I know that some culture, I think something we also want to look into regarding cultures, we want to look into cultures that we previously lost over COVID. I know I can see, and I've heard personally from upper-year students before they left, saying that we've lost many cultures from before COVID. So I want to make sure we can do a deep dive and really look into what was going on before COVID and see what we continue after, given safety.
So even today on the Queen Journal articles, like there's the former rector, Grant Bishop also mentioned like there's the change of the staff. So as I over mentioned, we're also trying to maybe bring back some like the lost traditions such as like homecoming concert, just making sure we can more centralize students. Yeah.
MSOC president.
Nice. Can you hear me? So the SLC fee increase just failed. So what is your plan to be able to afford this space? And if you can't, how do you plan to continue AMS operations?
Yeah, so I think on this side, I've been, over the last few weeks, I've been going over the budget of the AMS across the last few years, across COVID, and while we are increasing our assets, we are increasing our revenue as we emerge from COVID, the main issue is our costs and our expenses are going up slightly faster. So I definitely see it as a valid concern, and I think a lot of the moves we're making currently are moves in the right direction. Stuff like merging the print and copy center with Studio Q will get rid of a lot of redundancies and create efficiencies where we can save money there, as well as bringing back the brew and having the brew and Kogo have different brand identities and making sure one can specialize on what it's known for as well as the other will also help not only increase student engagement as well as revenue, but also decrease costs as both services can focus on what they do best. I think there's a lot of little efficiencies like this that I hope can
Sick internal?
Hi, sorry. So, yeah. Okay, so there seems to be like a very big emphasis on business and your background as a commerce student to a business student. But I just want to ask, how does this interact with the advocacy piece that Leo and the rest of you have underneath your campaign? Because with business, there is the possibility to have revenue and money be the main concern. And although those things are important within the AMS, students are first, they are the most important thing. It's not about money. So how do you kind of making sure that that's not forgotten during your campaign or during your term as exec?
Yeah, of course. So, I think it's an outdated idea that the business school only teaches for-profit business. We also have a lot of classes on not-for-profit or non-profits, such as the AMS. And, at the end of the day, where we can find these efficiencies, where we can, increase, use my business experience and background, all of those efficiencies, all those benefits, they go back to the students at the end of the day, right? We're not here to make profits. If we find efficiencies somewhere, we're putting them back into the dollars and as well as the pockets of students. I think that's a huge part of it. As well as business is a huge portion of business is human resources, right? Able to manage your people and create fruitful connections as well as relationships there is important not just for business, but for any organization. So I like to think that the operations side, I have a lot of valuable experience that can go into that, such as my 5 years in nonprofits or government sector. I think I'm well fit.
And staff president?
I'm just going to repeat the second part of my question. If you cannot afford to move into the AMS, move AMS operations into the SLC, what is the plan?
Gotcha. Thank you for that question, because I think I focused a little bit too much on how to avoid that situation. But let's say it does come up, right? I think at the end of the day, the clubs, the extracurriculars, the services, everything that makes Queens Queens is so important to it that I would hope that we can negotiate and create mutually beneficial deals with our landlords, which would be Queen's University. If that is not the case, I would rather take the shirt off of my back any day before letting any back socks or clubs suffer the brunt of any mismanagement. However, I would like to emphasize that this is not my plan at all. I believe that there is a lot of room for improvement where we can save money, reduce costs, increase revenues, so that we don't go into a situation like this. I hope that answers your question a little bit better.
Thank you. How do you plan to combat hazing culture at Queen's?
I think the first step, like we've said, is always promoting health and safety. I think helping to promote resources, especially with harm reduction strategies. I think that once we've established these effective routes of communication through the increased engagement and through increased transparency, students will trust us more and hopefully utilize more resources. I know we'd already love to expand on the harm reduction strategies that we do around homecoming, but that doesn't just have to stop there. I think that university culture will always have a need for harm reduction. It's something I've realized over my time at Queens. So it's not, we want to help, as we mentioned before, we want to try and take the harmful parts of hazing culture away, and if there is good parts we can be left with, but that's have to be up to investigation.
Also to the point for education, we will also focus on getting first year especially, and then the incoming students to educate on themselves on for example, the hazing incident that happened in the past. So making students aware there might be something happen and then protect themselves accordingly.
How will you work to combat issues, including but not limited to anti-Semitism and Islamophobia? Sorry. How will you work to combat issues, including but not limited to anti-Semitism and Islamophobia?
So for AMS is student government that represent all the undergraduate society students. So what we'll try to do is we're gonna first, as I said, always keep the communication portals open. Whenever any incident happens, we will be basically like almost 24/7. We will make sure like students can reach out us at the first time, and we will also reach out to the affected student group at the first time. So first we will reach out, for example, like even the anti-Semitism, Queen's Halal, or for the Islamophobia, different Muslim group, to making sure like their voice get heard. And then that would be something I would do it in collaboration with the incoming social issue commissioner.
Yeah, and if there's when working with these student groups, if we find major things to speak with administrators about, we will make sure we raise these problems to whoever it may be. But at the end of the day, students and student safety and emphasis comes first in our campaign.
What does your team plan to do to support or create sexual violence prevention and response initiatives?
Yeah, I would like to touch upon a lot of the amazing work that's being done with the head managers. They all have their own passion projects that I am just blown away with, honestly. For example, Walcomb's doing Take Back the Night, Peer Support Center is trying to bring back bike talk, as well as Queer for Peers, and there's many, many, many more initiatives such as these. Unfortunately, these initiatives are still young. A lot of them are in their first or second year back from COVID. So I think there is a lot of room to improve there, and I would like to support these homegrown initiatives that aren't just our goals, not just our passion projects, but the passion projects of head managers and those who came before us.
Yeah, and then we will also work with sexual assault centers and then other different university departments to making sure we will leave it to the professionals, and then making sure also working with like different committees at AMS trying to learn about the issues.
So we have 5 minutes. How are you, as AMS student representatives, going to ensure the protection and safety of Palestinian students on campus in light of various anti-Palestinian hate crimes that have been happening all across North America?
I know we've already touched on this a couple times, but I think that the biggest thing will be, first of all, speaking to these student groups. As much as we think we have an idea of these things, I think that it's important to speak to people who are more educated than us on these specific issues. And once we have their opinions, it'll be our job to advocate them. This is one of those examples where I don't want to be guessing where the students think, and as much as I have a good idea of where to start, I think it's most important that we have the most educated students and those with that lived experience talk us through what changes they'd like to see. And that will come to us then advocating to senior levels of administration to ensure those changes that they think would help these groups on campus come to fruition.
Yeah, so for my part, as I currently as the senator, I've already reached out to both group, especially like the Muslim group, during the early stage of the conflicts and learning about what's going on there. And then something I'm going to continue to do is that since I'm not sitting on the Senate anymore, I will be having more meetings with the university administration and trying to address the concerns and then.
Thank you. So our VP UA currently has a question, so if you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Wait, sorry, give me a second. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep, just a second.
Awesome.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Is that better? Okay, yeah, no, my apologies for not being able to be there. I'm currently in Ottawa for Lobby Week, but my question is for the VPUA candidate, specifically the fact that publicly the student body has seen you take an adversarial approach to the AMS and Queen's University. However, you are responsible for representing both of these entities at a municipal, provincial, and federal level in the VPUA role. So my question is, how do you plan to positively represent both the organization and the university as an advocate for all students?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part?
Should I just repeat the whole thing?
Yeah, just go ahead.
I'm so sorry, guys. So my question being for the VPUA candidate, such that publicly the student body has seen you take an adversarial approach to the AMS and Queen's University. However, you are responsible for representing both of these entities at a municipal, provincial, and federal level in the VPUA role. My question being, how do you plan to positively represent both the organization and the university as an advocate for all students?
So first, as a PPE major, I have, this is basically my program, my specialty. And then also, the best example I can use is back in high school, I have wrote at least 3 proposals to the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Immigration, and I did make some actual changes to the federal policy. On that side, I suggest on like having increasing more numbers of the younger international students to come, and then regarding programs on that. So that would be something I already done, and then plus I have also been really active on like different student advocacy work, even back to high school year, even at university. For example, even something like maybe mock, like even model parliament, where that kind of stuff is also some of the stuff I'm gonna try to, yeah. So I would say the best way is also trying to have a stronger alliance with other universities. For example, I talked with U of T, McGill, Western, and we're gonna form a stronger alliance on advocating for students on behalf, not just Queens.
Thank you. We have a question from Sophia and then Nathan.
Hello. I would love if you could expand more on your SUPR answer. Recently, NSOC developed an SUPR lead role based off of the wonderful work from the ASIS SUPR rep from last year. We currently have coalitions and several meetings of that nature, and I know that Vic has worked very well with all of with both our position, and I've been to several of those meetings as well, so I know that that scope also falls under VPUA consistently. How do you plan to continue the work with the faculty societies, and additionally with those initiatives that Tyler mentioned earlier, how do you plan to expand on those and grow those while also making this more of a feature of all of the faculty societies beyond the ones that just currently have the roles?
Sorry, can you also repeat the first part?
Yeah, no worries. With NSOC recently developing an SUPR lead role, as well as ASIS currently having one, and Vic's work with us across coalitions and various aspects of that nature, on top of the initiatives that Tyler mentioned, how do you plan to expand on these and grow the relationships with the faculty societies and continue this work, especially with the university and their SUPR members and staff members, and continue to grow these and hopefully develop more positions like this in other faculty societies and encourage that growth?
Yeah, so the first thing first, the key will be the collaboration part, and then also learning to adopt into the new system. For example, like as you mentioned, engineering have the stuff. It's like the first thing first we can have is we can have more communication portals, in like informal discussion portals for the engineering society or wherever faculty society to learn from the AMS, or even in some way we can act as like kind of more mentor stuff. And besides from that, we're also trying to in some way, like first we will definitely encourage all the faculty society to have more initiatives that to develop.
And I think part of that will also mention collaboration. I'm really big on FACSOC. So I think part of this will be to be able to not only speak with the current faculty society leaders, but also to be able to speak with what's worked with the roles, like you said, of bringing that in, and be able to talk with the incoming ones as to where these new roles can fit into their new plan for the future. So I guess intercepting at this change of hands to ensure that these changes can be made is successful.
Thank you. Resident Society President.
Thank you. So my question for you is that RedSoc, not necessarily being a member of the AMS, kind of like an external organization, how do you see the AMS working with the organization moving forward, and what their place is within the university and the AMS currently?
Yeah, so for the collaboration with RedSoc, as we have also had conversation before, especially when it comes to orientation in the first year affairs. So first thing first, we were gonna have more regular collaboration. For example, like one thing we have brainstorms, for example, even environmental hub, we're gonna have more events that's AMS based, and then collaborate with the RedSoc, and for example, having some different event in Big Hall Lobby or like different locations to making sure like we have also just making sure to bring more RedSoc voices into the conversation. For example, like even we will consider maybe try to change the constitution and making the RedSoc into a voting member, or at least have the chance to speak on the assembly.
Yeah, I think a lot of our plans will involve first years. We understand that RedSoc is inherently integrated in first year culture, so we're looking forward to exploring collaboration to where, especially with the new services, we can find where we can both help each other.
Great. Ruth, yeah.
Okay, so this was quite far back, but I just thought to bring it up again. So you mentioned when asked about how you plan on tackling Islamophobia and anti-Semitism on campus. Unfortunately, within the last couple of months, we've seen a rise in both of these on our campus, and to be very honest, worldwide. But a big part of what you mentioned was a lot of collaboration and a lot of talking to student groups. And it seems like throughout your answers, when it involved student groups, it was always placing the onus on them and that to be the responsibility of the student groups. How do you plan on educating yourself without burdening students? Because it's not necessarily their responsibility to educate you, but it's also really big that you are able to have these conversations without them turning into things where they have to teach or explain, and rather open communication. So how do you plan on doing that?
I think that's a great question. I think that's a valid concern. Rest assured, we won't approach these groups with no previous work being done. We will do our due diligence. That is to be said. Like I said, safety is the number one priority for students on campus. It's disgusting here when that's not the case. So I think we'll come to these groups not with we'll come to these groups with questions and with prepared ideas to where we could use that clarification, not in the sense to put onus on them to provide us with all the answers, but instead to come up with a good solution on our own, run it by them, see what they think. Again, not their responsibility. I understand they're just advocacy rules, but I think that's not to offload work from us, but to keep the work, if not anything, take on more work, but instead take away some of that decision making and maybe import some of that decision making.
And also for the education part, I will say I will first read more like first-hand materials from the student, and also keep on track on the social media posts from the student leader from both sides, and learning more, making sure it's non-biased, and making sure I heard as many voices as possible.
All right, thank you. I currently do not see any more questions from assembly members, so that concludes our debate period. We will now be breaking for pizza and then returning for the team questioning period where we will be exhausting everyone's questions, including members at large. There will be a mic for you to ask a question. And yeah.